don't actually have to use the microphone, I think. You can all understand me. Right, so welcome to the, I think it's called Academic Engagement Day now, right? Okay, so it used to be called Enrollment Day, but hopefully most of you are already enrolled by now, right? Because you could do it online, so that's great. So this is for Master of Networks and Security. I guess you've already seen that, so if you're not enrolled in that degree, you're probably in the wrong place, but I guess most of you are. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about some of the structure of the degree that you're enrolled in. Well, first of all, I'm going to show you who the course leadership team is, so who are the people you can talk to. Then we'll talk a little bit about the course structure. So what are the units that you can actually choose from? It's quite restricted in MNS, so you have to plan a bit carefully which units you pick. Then where you can get information about those units, so you can make a proper decision. How you can get recognition for prior learning. So if you've already studied some of these topics, I'll tell you in which cases you might get credit for those units you've already studied. And then in the end, we're going to have a little panel here with a few people who are involved in this degree in our faculty. And then we'll open it up to questions from you. I think this will probably take about 20 minutes or so, where I go through these details, and then we'll have a panel, depending on how many questions you have. And then I think you should know almost everything you need to know to get started in a couple of weeks. All right, let's start with course leadership. Right, I should tell you who I am, of course. So my name is Guido Tack. I'm a senior lecturer here in the faculty. And I'm now the course director for the Master of Networks and Security. So I've only taken up that role from this semester, so I'm quite new. That's why I've got my deputy here, Ron Steinfeld, sitting in front here, and he's also going to be on the panel to help me out if maybe there's a few things that I don't know yet, but I'm sure I'll find out soon. Okay, so I'm the course director. What does that actually mean? It means that you can contact me if you need help with things, all right? So just email me in those cases. If I'm not the right person, I will send it to the right person, so that is not a problem. But in particular, if you have questions about, for example, credit and exemption, we'll talk about that in more detail later. If you, for example, have problems that you failed a unit and now you don't have the prerequisites for some other units that you were enrolled in, things like that. So if there's problems around these sorts of course progression topics, you can talk to me. Also, just questions around the course in general, if you're not sure about some units and things like that. So that's mainly what my role is. But you can always also contact, for example, the chief examiners of the units directly. Right? So if you have particular questions about the contents of the unit, it's best to talk to the person who's actually teaching that unit. But I might also be able to forward questions to them. If you contact me, please come with a plan. Right? Don't just email me and say, I have no idea what to do. Right? So have a look at the course map first, try to find out what the possible options are, and then I can help you, for example, choose between those options, or I can explain more if there's something unclear. Right? So that's the idea. Okay, let's talk a bit more about the structure of the course. So what are the units that you can actually choose from? As I said, MNS is, well, you don't have a lot of choice, right? So it's not as broad as some of our other degrees. So that's why it's really important to understand what the structure is. All right, so first of all, there's the handbook that has all the information. Right? You can also find that easily by just Googling Monash Master of Networks and Security. Right? It'll put you straight on that page. I'll just have a look whether I can bring up the page here. So it looks like this. And it has basically all the information, like the overview information for that course. Right, little description, outcomes. Hopefully you've already read all that. And then there's the actual information about which units you have to choose and things like that. Right, so that's the official overview page for that course. So that really defines what this course is. Okay, and the units in this master's degree are structured into basically 3 parts. So the first part is foundations. And not all of you have to do those units, right? So foundations is basically units that introduce things that are equivalent to a bachelor's degree in IT. Right? So if you don't have a bachelor's degree in IT yet, then those units will bring you up to speed. That's the idea. Then part B is the core study in your master's degree. So that's 48 points, right? Which means 8 units. And there's basically a few core units that you have to take, and then a few approved electives that you can choose from. Right? We'll go through the list in a minute. And then finally, part C is called Advanced Practice. And that's 24 points, so that's, well, it's not really 4 units, but it depends how you count it. And that could be either research or an industry experience project. And you have to choose between those 2 options. Right? So basically summarizing that, these are your 4 semesters of study. Right? First semester, you do your 4 foundation units. If you already have credit for those, you can start straight into semester 2, basically. Right? So you just skip the first part. But I think most of you will probably do the foundation units. Right? Then in semester 2, you would typically do 2 core units, and those would be 5163 and 5057, plus 2 electives. And then the last 2 semesters are a combination of your advanced practice and further elective units. So for example, if you go for the research part, then you would do research methods and the first part of your master's thesis, plus 2 electives in semester 3, and then the final 2 parts of your master's thesis, plus a further 2 electives in semester 4. Right, so that's if you pick research. Alternatively, you can do industry, which means 4 elective units in semester 3, and then industry experience studio project, so that's worth 12 points, so it's worth 2 units essentially. Right, plus 5136, which I think is software engineering, and professional practice, which are 2 units you're doing in parallel. Right? So as you can see, there's a little bit of room for electives there, right? But some of the structure is pretty rigid, so you have to plan carefully what you can do when. Okay, let's go through the individual parts one by one. In the foundation units, I'm sure because most of you will have enrolled in them for this semester, right? So you already kind of know what the choices are, right? So there's the 2 programming foundations units that you can choose from. And that's something you can really think about. If you, for example, if you already know some Java, maybe it might be interesting to learn Python in addition, right? Just to get additional skills. So that's something where you have a little bit of choice in your first semester. Then we have databases, computer architecture and operating systems, and data communications. Right? That's your 4 foundation units. And these units are really designed so that they don't require previous IT knowledge. You should know how to use a web browser and stuff like that, right? Obviously. But and you don't have to already have any knowledge about, for example, networks to do well in data communications. Or you don't have to know anything about databases to do really well in that unit. It's really basic knowledge. So that everybody basically gets up to speed, and from semester 2, everybody can do all the advanced units. That's the idea. If you already have an IT degree, you can apply for credit for these units. Right? Then you may not have to do these units. And you could even skip the entire first semester. But I know that for some, that's not that attractive because you maybe want to study a two-year degree for other reasons. But yeah. Okay, so that's your first semester. Then the core of the master study, the core MNS units, are some core prescribed units that you have to take, plus some electives. So you all have to do project management, which is FIT 5057. So you see every unit has one of these codes, right? And you all have to do FIT 5163, which is Information and Computer Security, which is kind of really a foundation unit for the entire degree. Right? So everybody does those two. And then you have electives you can choose from. But again, the choice is somewhat limited. Right? So you can choose 2 units from the network stream and 2 units from the security stream. So everybody's doing 2 network, 2 security. Or, and then in addition to that, you can do another 2 units from those 2 streams, or just 1 unit from those 2, and 1 unit from the entire faculty level 5 units. Right? So here you could really pick any unit that we offer in the faculty. And I think under very special circumstances, if you can make a good argument, you might even be able to do other units outside the faculty there. Right? But then you would have to get approval for that. But so this is really the place where you can pick basically anything you like. Right? But you see the choice is quite limited there. So you have to plan that better. All right, so that's your core, and then on top of that you get your 4 research units, which is research methods, plus the 3 units for your master's thesis, or 4 industry experience units, right, which is software engineering, professional practice, plus the 2 IE studio project units. Okay, so a little bit more about the research stream, because there's some additional conditions on that stream. So if you want to do the research stream, so write master's thesis rather than doing industry experience, in order to enroll in that stream, you must have completed 24 points of level 5 FIT units. Right? So that means not the foundation units. Right? It means 4 other units, typically your core units and some electives from the MNS selection. And you have to have at least a 75 mark on average for these 4 level 5 units. Right? So the foundation units don't count for that. So that means that if you want to do the research stream, your second semester is really important. Right? You have to do well in semester 2, because that's where you have to get your 75% to do research afterwards. And the idea is that these research units are a pathway if you want to do PhD studies afterwards. Right? So typically if you do industry experience, then your master's degree will not have a sufficient research component to then apply for PhD studies afterwards. So if that's something you're planning to do, you should also plan that early. Right, how do you find out what the units are about? Well, for each unit, we have a handbook entry and a unit guide. So the handbook entry is a bit more high level, right? It tells you something about learning outcomes and so on. And it's pretty much the same every semester. The unit guide is has a bit more detail, right? So, and again, to find these, I mean, for example, for FIT 9132, you just type in FIT 9132. Probably don't even have to type in Monash, and you probably get the right web pages for that. So I can just quickly show you what the handbook would look like. So this is for the foundation unit for databases. So it tells you when it's actually offered, first semester, 2018 and so on. A little synopsis, what the assessment is like. So for example, that will tell you whether there's an exam or not. Some units have exams at the end, others don't. Workload requirements, but that's pretty much it. Right? So not a lot of detail there. If you look at the unit guide, for that one you actually have to be logged in. So you need your Monash login to access the unit guide. And that should have a lot more detail. For example, it'll tell you who's currently teaching that unit, on which campus. Again, learning outcomes, a bit about teaching approach, what the assessment is worth, each component of the assessment. Then a schedule, so you can see at least roughly what the topics are in each week. And some more information about assessment tasks. So what kind of assignments you have to do, how much they're worth, what you're expected to do, and things like that. Yes, and something about the exams, and probably the rest is not that important right now. Also resources like, for example, if there's a textbook that you may want to look at before, or if there's software you need for that unit, that would all be explained in the unit guide. Right, so that's something, that's kind of the resources you should use to make a decision which units to study. Right? Now, you probably, when you enrolled, you already had to pick some units for the entire year, right? But you can still make changes. So it's not too late to make changes if now, after today, maybe you look at some of the descriptions more carefully and then change your mind. That's still possible. Okay, a little bit about study load. So full-time study means 24 points per semester. A unit is 6 points, so that's 4 units in a semester. That's full-time study. Part-time study is 6 or 12 points per semester. All right, so you just reduce the number of units per semester, but usually international students, and I think most of the students enrolled in MNS are international students, cannot study part-time. Right, so that means you have to actually enroll in 4 units every semester as part of your visa condition. And that can be a bit of a problem sometimes. Right, so just be aware of that. I mean, when you try to enroll, they will tell you that you cannot do less than 4 units. It also applies even if you want to do a unit over summer, for example. You still have to enroll in 4 units during the regular semester. So that's just what the rules are. Workload. So usually 1 unit is 12 hours of work per week. Right? So it's 4 hours of class time. That's 2 hours of lectures usually, and 2 hours of labs tutorials, plus 8 hours of self-study per week. Right? I really want to stress that. You should really take this seriously. If you do the maths, that's 48 hours of work per week during semester. Right? And from my experience, some students really underestimate the workload, and that can become a problem if you basically can't keep up during like halfway through the semester. It's really difficult to catch up. So you should really be aware of this basically from day one, that you have to invest enough time, because otherwise you'll really struggle towards the end of the semester and when the exams come and so on. I mean, obviously, this is just an average, right? So some units might require a bit more work, some a bit less. Obviously, if you already have some experience with programming, for example, then maybe the programming units will be very easy for you. But then the step up to semester 2 might be even harder, right? Because maybe you're not used to doing 48 hours per week. All right. If you change your mind, that's not a problem. So every semester you have until the end of week 2 to change your enrollment without any problems. Right? You can just drop a unit and replace it with another unit. And especially if I mean, most of you will just do the foundation units this semester, so there's not much to choose from anyway. But then for semester 2, if you change your mind, you can still do that. Right? So really have a careful look at the unit guides and pick something that works. You also have to be careful that some units are only offered in semester 1 or only offered in semester 2. Right? So in that case, it can be a bit difficult to put your entire plan together so that you have all the prerequisites and can study those units in the semesters when they are actually available. Right? So be a bit careful about that. Right, the final thing, credit and exemptions, or recognition of prior learning. So credit means that you just don't have to do a unit because you've already studied something that's equivalent. Right? And that means that your degree becomes shorter. Right? With 1 unit, you get credit for that unit, and you don't have to do that unit in your degree. Exemption means it's something very similar. So you've already studied an equivalent unit before, but you swap it for an elective, essentially. Right? So your degree doesn't become shorter. You still do the full 96 points overall, but you don't have to do one of the mandatory units. All right? So depending on which one suits you better, you would apply for one or the other. Right, how does that work? Well, you basically apply for this exemption. You can contact the faculty office upstairs, right, in level 6 in this building. you fill out this application form. You have to have evidence for your prior learning. So things like academic transcripts and descriptions of the units that you think are equivalent to one of our units here. And then we will process the applications and then let you know the outcome. And we'll try to do that as quickly as possible so that you can then change your enrollment accordingly. And yeah, if you get exemption or credit for a unit, you then have to change your enrollment. Right? You first have to enroll as if you didn't get any exemptions or credit, so that your enrollment is complete. And then when it's granted, you can then change your enrollment and pick different units or just drop one. Just something that comes up, well, not that frequently, but sometimes we cannot give you credit for undergraduate units, right? Because this is a postgraduate degree. If you've studied something similar as an undergraduate unit, we most of the time...
For 5,000 units?
Oh yes, sorry, for level 5 units. For the foundation units, we do give you credit for undergrad units because they are supposed to be equivalent to an undergrad. Thank you. Yes, exactly. So this only applies to the level 5 units. So everything after your first semester, right? So for those units, because they are master's level units, we cannot give you credit if you've studied something similar in an undergraduate degree. And we don't do that for our own students who did an undergraduate degree at Monash either. They may have similar units in their bachelor's, but we can't give them credit in the master's degree. Right, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say as an overview. I think we probably just assemble the panel around here and then maybe quickly introduce everyone and then you can ask questions.
I'll stand up. You guys sit down. So, hi everyone, I'm Trudy and I look after student services for our faculty and for the students in the Master of Networks and Security. So, welcome. We are located on level 6 of this building and we can help you with any questions that you have. We look after all of the administration for your course, so that ranges from helping you enrol today, if you haven't yet done that, to helping you with your exams, your results, special consideration, everything that happens up until graduation. If you have any questions, please come and ask us on level 6. It doesn't matter if you think, oh, that's not something I should be asking the faculty. If you don't know where to go, just ask us and we will direct you to the appropriate place. Hands up who hasn't enrolled yet today. So everyone's enrolled in all of their units already? That's amazing. That has not happened for any of the other courses. Congratulations. Everyone's got their ID cards? Yeah, great. Gee, you didn't have to come today, guys. I'm glad you did. Next week is orientation, and we encourage all of our students to come to orientation because we don't go over anything that's been discussed today. It is very much designed to help put you in the right position to travel through your course successfully and complete your study within the period of time within which you're expecting to do that. So there's lots and lots and lots of questions that you might have. Even when you go away today and think, oh, why didn't I ask that question? You can ask us. So, for example, I was thinking when Guido was giving his presentation before, and he stated correctly that international students, for example, must maintain a full-time study load. And that's correct. That's part of your visa requirements as an international student. However, if something terrible happens and you get really unwell, or you might need to go back home for one reason or another, come and ask us about how maybe you could underload your study. There are special requirements that you need to satisfy in order to do something like that, but lots of things are possible. You just might not know that they exist. So any questions, come and ask, and please come and ask early, because the more time that goes past, the more options are taken away from you, and we want to be able to help you right at the beginning if something's not going right for you. Okay, so have I missed anything? No? Would you like to say anything, Ron? So Ron is the Deputy Director, Ron Steinfeld, of your degree. So Guido and Ron can help you with any academic questions.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, you're welcome to email either me or Guido. So I think you've covered pretty well, I think, the main points. So yeah, I don't really have anything to add, but you're welcome to ask now any questions from all the panel. We have a couple of students that already finished their studies in this MNS course, and some of them are about to start a PhD. So I think, so Raymond here has finished the research stream.
Yes, I took the research pathway during my second year, and now I took the research pathway during my second year, and my supervisor is wrong. And currently, I'm studying for a PhD from this semester. So so if you have any questions about, for example, the research pathway, or maybe something about the thesis, maybe you can ask me. So
And we also have
Great. Yeah. So I did the IE stream, industry experience.
This is Najib.
Oh yes, my name is Najib, by the way. So I graduate in December. So if any of you have any questions about any of the units, like what you'll be learning in terms of networks and security, if you're interested in cryptocurrencies as well, I can maybe tell you how these two things might align, what you learn, how it incorporates probably the essentials that would come with delving into that field of work. But I digress. Besides that, if you have any questions about the fun stuff that's involved as well, in terms of hacking and white hat, of course. Definitely. I can tell you about the things that we did. And I can tell you about the things I enjoy, things I didn't enjoy, but I'll leave it to you guys if you're interested. That's all I have to say for now.
Okay, I'm Gail, and I look after the industry experience unit at the end. So you'll either go the research path or you go to the industry experience path. And the major difference is, of course, the research. You will probably end up you'll probably be looking to do your PhD and working in that kind of area, perhaps becoming an academic in the future. The industry experience unit, that looks after getting ready for you to go to work. The intent is that when you finish, you will know all about what to do, and you'll be able to go to work somewhere in your discipline and be valuable from day one. And it's a capstone unit. It's worth 12 points, so it's a double unit. It's very intense. It's run twice a week. And you actually end up working with students from other disciplines inside the faculty. The intent of the capstone unit is for you to bring all your learning that you've had from your degree and use it inside the team that you work with inside the industry experience unit. So you will work with MBIS students, you will work with MIT, you will work with MDS, and you might work with project management students. So you all have to learn how to speak to each other and be nice to each other. And they're very different from you, and you are very different from them. So it's a really good experience for you to be able to actually get some communication skills and understand about how different people work. And we do a project, and it's a real project, and you create something. It may be a website, it may be a mobile app, it may be something completely different. It really depends on who's in your team and what skills that you have. But you actually produce something, and it is actually, if it's good, it will be used.
Thanks, Gail. Okay, so my name's Campbell. I don't have a lot to do with the course specifically, but the reason I'm here is my role as Associate Dean International in the faculty. So my
my role is essentially I'm in charge of the faculty's international strategy, but I also have a keen interest in ensuring that the international student experience is a good one. Now, I don't expect that you are all international students, although why don't I ask? Put your hand up if you're an international student. Okay. Who's not an international student? Great. All right. Incidentally, I can give you some statistics about your course. There's 172 people enrolled in the Master of Network Security, 154 international students, the remaining 18 local Australian students. This is a great opportunity for you guys. So as academics, we tend to work internationally, we collaborate internationally, particularly working and operating in Australia. The research environment is relatively small. We necessarily have to work with international collaborators. The great advantage for you guys is that you will be working with international collaborators within your student teams, and you don't have to go anywhere or communicate anywhere outside of this room and the wider MNS community. So I just encourage you to make use of that selection of backgrounds that you have within your teams, within IE, for instance, if you do IE, and just within the course generally. So happy to take any questions as it relates to international as well. Oh, and Pari is here. Hello, Pari. Would you like to come up? Pari is... We're just doing introductions. So.
Finished everyone? Yes. Oh, okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Pari. I'm minor thesis coordinator. You can have a seat. You know, I'm minor thesis coordinator, and I guess it was discussed that as part of your course, you need to, thank you, make a decision about two options available to you, either to study IE or to choose minor thesis. And minor thesis, if you choose it, it goes over 2 semesters. There are 4 units. One of those units is an elective unit, is research methods that teaches you how to do research-based tasks such as doing literature review, how to formulate research questions, and you will do that in when you start the minor thesis part 1. So those 2 units together, and the following your last semester you will just do minor thesis part 2 and 3 where you write your thesis. There is a hurdle of 75% average that you need to meet that criteria if you are interested to do the minor thesis. And why you do minor thesis, the reasons, well, one will be that you are really interested to go deep in a certain area of research because during your semester you have coursework unit and you will get familiar with different areas, but there might be some specific sub-area that you are interested and you want to, and then that would be one reason. One can be the other, you want to do a PhD later, or you want to, you know, interested in an academic career later. And also research component, it will be useful to some of the jobs in industry, depending what type of the job you want. It will be for some a benefit to do that. To do the minor thesis, you don't attend any lectures or tutorials. It will be your weekly meeting with your supervisors, and one of the most important, I think, criteria to go and do minor thesis is you need to find a project and a supervisor. And we have a list of advertised projects that we will make it available to you when the time comes, and not now. But before that, if you want to think about it, you can, after semester 1, you get an idea of some of the lecturers and what topics is, you know, their research area, and you can talk to them and see if they are, you know, suggesting any projects that you can work with them. And what else? So there are assessment under the minor thesis. It starts with proposal, literature review for semester, and second semester is only at the end. You have the final thesis that you write. And also you do the presentation at the end of every semester. So you will, in your area, you know, you can find some sub-area and you can go deeper in that area if you are passionate. And if you have any other questions, I will be here after this if you want to ask any questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Did anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask anyone on the panel? Please ask a question. Come on, there must be one question. Thank you.
Okay, so the question was that your lab was scheduled before the class, right? So that can happen, and then typically that unit will be structured around that schedule, right? So the lecturer is aware of that, and then, well, it's possible that you have something that you prepare in the lab that is then basically explained more deeply in the lecture, or that you basically have the lab that corresponds to a lecture the week after. But that's usually taken care of by the structure of the unit, so that's not a problem. Yeah.
So if when you allocate, you are permitted to take a lab or a tute prior to the lecture, then that's the way that the lecture has been designed around the lab or the tute. So if you should be doing it afterwards, you won't be able to do your lab or tute beforehand. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
And, for some units, the labs don't start until week 2. So in week 1, there may not be a lab for your unit. It depends on particular. Any other questions?
You might want to find out how difficult a certain unit is, or how difficult the course was, or if you want advice or tips, the things that, you know, because I did, or we did this course, so we went through maybe some troubles, and we found out this is a better way to do it. So those are some questions you want to be asking right now, because otherwise you'll have to go through it yourself.
I have a student question. How can we get our textbooks? We should buy it before class, or we can get it in the class?
Sorry, how can you get your
Textbooks.
Textbooks.
I wanna prepare.
Yeah, well, that's good. Excellent.
Yes, you should have access to the reading list for the unit, normally from next week. Also. Sorry?
So in the unit
And
guides?
the unit guide also has the textbooks. And then depending, I mean, some of them are online, some of them you might find in the library, or you may have to buy a copy. But you should have a list. Yeah, that's right, the unit guides should have a list. You have to be a bit careful, though. Sometimes there's a prescribed textbook, which means you basically have to get a copy of that textbook, because every week we will use that textbook for the unit. And sometimes it's more of a suggestion if you want to know more about the topic, right? So don't just go on the unit guide and buy 12 textbooks for the next semester, right? Because not all of them are absolutely required. So really be careful. If it says prescribed textbook, then you should probably buy it. If it's just a recommendation, maybe wait for the first week and see what the lecturer says, whether it's actually really necessary to buy it, or whether you just go to the library sometimes and have a look if you want to know something more. Yeah.
By the way, textbook in the library, the number is limited. Yeah. So by the way, the number of textbooks in the library is limited. So if you, for example, your lecturer need you to have a specific textbook, you'd better prepare in advance. So for example, maybe now to ask the library staff, maybe. Yes.
Yeah, good idea.
Actually, in addition to that, with regards to the textbooks, because most of the time you'll be using those to complete assignments, and some readings, and you have to do some, reading, and sort of write a recommendation is most of the time, most of the units, you can start the assignments actually from day one, or like week 2 whenever they get listed. Instead of waiting, if you feel like, oh, I need to, first get myself to the point where I can do it. Most of the time, you don't have to. There's a lot of preliminary work or readings that's just given an assignment, and you can start from day one instead of waiting last minute, and then textbooks are out or it's last minute anyway. So that's something I've done the hard way on.
Well,
Hi, I'm Gerald. I'm a student without IT background, and I have read the introduction of the course, but I still got a little bit confused about the course, especially for the networks and security streams. So could you please just briefly tell us the differences between these two streams? Thank you.
So, yeah, as you mentioned, there's the networks and security part of this course. There is some overlap between these topics because security has a lot of considerations related to networks and how the communication protocols work, but in many other aspects are kind of separate. In the security units, you will study various techniques to achieve different security properties, and it's good to know how they are used in network protocols, but the techniques are quite different than what you will study in networks. I think, as you saw from the course requirements, you have to choose a certain number from each one, because you cannot just pick from, say, networks. You will not have enough units to pick from. So you have to choose from both, but as long as you meet these requirements that were listed there, then it should be fine. You should also pay attention to the semester that each unit is offered in, because some units are only offered in one of the 2 semesters. So if you really want to do a unit, then you have to plan to do it in the right semester. So it's good to plan ahead for your several semesters instead of just the next one.
Also, I think you need to consider what you want to do in the future. For example, if you want to do research, so maybe you want to take some more advanced unit. For example, there is a unit in the security stream called advanced security. So so if you, for example, you are really interested in security, then maybe you want to take it. So, and also, if you, for example, if you want to be a network engineer, so maybe you want to take more units from the network stream. So you need to think about what you want to do in the future.
Actually, I can elaborate on this. Okay, in addition to what was just said, I think just the main difference is, in layman's words, with network units, you'll be looking more at networks, obviously, things like coaxial, cables, fiber optics. You'll be looking at setting up routers, the coverage, how much it would cost, multi-level connections. That sort of stuff. That's what we talk about when it comes to networks and setting up. For example, you've got a network there, and you've got X amount of students that need X amount of computers, right? And so you need to know how to connect and which cables to use and which type of antenna to use and so on and so forth. Whereas with security, it's more focused with encryption or ciphers. and it's a lot more, you know, I suppose theoretical, mathematical. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. You're welcome.
Can I just say in relation to all of that too, so you all would have picked up a course map when you arrived today, so you really should pay attention to which units, as you've been advised, are offered in which semesters, and plan your course of study. You can do that now. It doesn't mean you can't change it later on, but if you are really interested in doing particular units, you do need to plan that study now. We don't normally change units that are only offered in one semester. We don't say run a unit in semester 1 this year and then next year we'll run it in semester 2. We try to keep it as stable as possible so that you can plan your study for the whole 2 years. Okay, sorry, someone else wanted to ask a question. Who was that?
So you have to choose two. You have to choose 2 from the network, 2 from security, and then another 2 which you can pick from either of those 2. Right, so you're doing 6 units in total, 6 electives. 2 of them have to be from networks, 2 of them have to be from security, and the rest you're a bit free.
The thing to pay attention to, obviously, is that some of those units, so 5124 and 5129, for example, they have other 5,000 level units as prerequisites. So again, it's about looking at what semesters the units are offered in, what prerequisites are required, and planning your study around that.
Mm-hmm.
So if they want to do the IE, which includes less, I mean, in one semester, so they have to be careful how to spread it between, because minor thesis will be in 2 semesters, but IE will be 1 semester.
So that's laid out on the study.
Yeah, so you need to consider that with your unit selection.
And just to give you an example, so FIT 5124 is only offered in 2nd semester and has 5163 as a prerequisite. Right, so that means you have to be a bit careful how you plan that, right? Because it basically means you can't do it this year. Right? You'll have to do it in 2nd semester next year. So assuming you do the foundation units this semester, right, then this simply wouldn't work.
I also highly recommend that unit.
Do I have to take all the fundamentals in the semester 1, or I can take maybe like introduction to database? Can I take it in semester 2? Because I didn't see it as a prerequisite unit for other units.
So you can vary completing all of the foundation units in your first semester. You can do that. We recommend that you do the foundations in your first semester because generally speaking they are prerequisites for the subsequent units. So if you get those out of the way in your first semester, then you should be able to go on to most of the other units without any problems. So that's the reason why we suggest that you do that. Then you've got your foundation base knowledge to continue on with the rest of the units. But if there's a unit within your course that doesn't have any prerequisite requirements, or you've been given credit or an exemption for one of those units, you certainly can complete a 5,000 level unit in your first semester of study. Does that answer your question? Yep, okay. The units? Yep, okay, so you can change units for your first semester of study up until the end of week 2 of semester 1. We advise that you don't wait until the end of the 2nd week of semester to change units because we want to make sure that you have, as much time as possible to devote towards what you have chosen. And the semesters are only 12 weeks long, so you really need to be enrolled in the right units from as early as you can be. So for semester 2 units, the same. You can change up until the end of week 2 of 2nd semester as well. Yes, you can do that right now. So I will say, though, that if you're enrolling in semester 2 units that require you to complete some prerequisite units in your first semester of study, you'll only be able to enrol in units now for second semester if you've either completed, gotten credit or exemptions, or are currently enrolled in the prerequisite units in semester 1. Because the system will recognise that you're enrolled in the prerequisite units, and the system assumes that you're going to pass all of those units.
But you can just do it online, right? So you can make those changes online. You don't have to come upstairs.
No, you can if you want to talk to us about it, but you can definitely do it online as you've already enrolled. You just make changes that way.
More questions? Good.
I'm from a non-IT background and just in a dilemma that whether to choose Java or Python in my foundations.
Yeah, just Python. I like Python. Well, to be honest, there's really not much coding involved besides actually the advanced networks and security, but advanced topics in networks and security. But that was mostly Python, wasn't it? Yeah. So there's actually not like you shouldn't be too worried about that. And even if you were, it's like on a basic level. Actually, you know what? I think it was information. Hold on. Just give me 1 second. Which one was it? It was information and computer security, I believe. It was, I think, when you do, software security, that's the one. That's when you run penetration testing and and I think that was, yeah, that was in C.
Yeah, it was in C, but I think this year we'll have more Java.
With Java, then, that's your answer. Yeah, because that was the most coding that was done throughout the course.
Yeah, and I think Python is also more useful for the mathematical stuff. So yeah, again, if you want to do research, you need to think about it. Yeah.
So another answer to that question is, it depends what units you're going to choose as part of your degree. So if you are wanting to choose a 5,000 level unit that requires that you have a Java background, then maybe you should think about completing 9131, or if you're interested in units that have the Python unit as a prereq.
Either Java or Python only, it's not like only Java, right? In prerequisites.
Sorry, what's the question?
In prerequisite, it's mentioned as either Java or Python. Yes, sir.
Okay, some are one or the other, and some are, you can have either.
Oh, okay.
Depends on which unit.
Yeah, so as long as you're familiar with one of them quite well, then you should be able to pick up the other one relatively easily. But
That's what.
Yeah.
That's what I asked. Which one can I do? I just in a dilemma whether Java or Python.
yeah,
Which one you guys suggest?
If you're going to do information and computer security,
Okay. Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have to go to level 6 for applying for my credit today, later?
Yes and no. So what you can do after this session is, there's a table over there, and Guido and Ron will be over there to just talk to you about credit questions that you have, credit or exemptions. And if you would like to apply, after discussing that with them, you can go upstairs to level 6 and we can help you do that now. Okay? We may not be able to process all of your credit today. We should be able to for foundation units, but if you're applying for credit or exemptions for any of the 5,000 level units, which generally students don't, but if you are, then that might take a little bit longer to process. Thank you.
One more question. And one more question is that if I have done project management for my during my undergraduate study, can I apply that? Can I use that to apply for the FIT 5057 as credit?
Yep. You can't apply for credit for the unit, but you can apply for an exemption, which means that you would have to complete another 5,000 level unit in its place.
I think I already did that, but I don't think I got it. I think I did
So it depends on the type of project management unit you studied. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a question for you. Can you just give us an overview of the courses which you chose and what you're doing right now and what we need to look out for?
I can't really remember my electives because I just remember focusing on security mostly. I do remember doing advanced stuff with security. That's one. And I wrote them here. So network design and performance, information computer security, network infrastructure, network protocol standards, software security, advanced topics and security. And to be honest, I think if you're contemplating whether to do IE or your research, it's best if you do it, you make that decision sooner than later. You set yourself up for that. So we'll get to that in a second. Now, in terms of just advice in general, like I said, the assignments start them early. Advanced topics of security, start early. I think the highlights, I suppose, of the course were the difficult ones. I wouldn't really say difficult. I don't think any of them are difficult. They just need more time. That's pretty much it. But advanced topics of security and networks infrastructure, those are the two that were sort of challenging. Were challenging. As for right now, I will be mentoring, I suppose, for a semester at Monash, IE actually. So I might see you, but maybe not actually at that time. But after that, I might be working as a systems analyst. And actually, in the meantime, I'm working on a startup for security-based. Think of it as like a packaged security software. But anyway, I was just hired to be on the advisory board. But in general, security in general, like the whole subject matter is like the future. That's what we're working towards. You'll find a position in any field of work, whether it's Telstra or your any small to medium business. Security is growing, it's constantly growing. Not only that, but like I mentioned earlier, cryptocurrencies as well. It's cryptocurrencies specifically in blockchain aren't really delved into, but the algorithms such as the SHA-256 algorithm, which Bitcoin is based on, for example, that's covered, and mathematically you will know how it works, and so you understand the intrinsic value that comes with cryptocurrency. The only reason I say this is because that's something else that you all could start looking into is blockchain development, because that's like pretty much the next big thing. If you want to be a developer, that would be around your thing as well. So that's something I'm sort of looking into as well now. And with regards to IE, I can't stress. I can only speak for it because I only did IE. I don't know. I can't speak for research, but it was. I did undergrad IE and I did postgrad IE, and most of them were like my favorite. It's like they pretty much brought everything that you learned together into just this one wholesome unit. And you might think, oh, I learned this one thing, I'm going to forget it next semester. I'm going to forget it as soon as the semester's done. But that unit sort of brings it all back together, and you're sort of forced to work with, not forced, but well, you are forced. You are forced to work with other people to make something that actually functions and it's a real, it's a real product. So the product development and taking security into consideration, keeping it in mind, this really sets you up for the industry. So really, like if this is something you put on your resume and you walk into an interview, that's really one of those points. I did this,
And I think part of the question was, what should we look out for? Oh, sorry, I thought you meant, like, what shouldn't we do?
But from what I've heard is, even though the security is like the big thing in the future, I've heard from a few people in Australia and in other countries that it's harder for an international student to get, because they prefer locals when it comes to security. So they prefer having locals here. So what is your take on that?
So I can't say I've already started applying for security positions. I can tell you something is that I know for the manager is at Telstra. He's a good friend of mine, and he's the reason actually why I got into security. He pretty much told me most businesses right now they're sort of desperate for anyone who does security, regardless of whether you need to be sponsored or not. I don't know, it's ubiquitous. I think it's something that's in need right now, and will always be in need. So you can't really go wrong with it. And it's on the skills occupation list, so there you go. I should say no. You can get a residence now. That's one thing.
So anyone that was in your year, do you know if they've already they applied for jobs and actually gotten any of those jobs?
Not yet. I think most of them. Actually, yes, I do. But she lives in Oman right now. But she used to work in a bank. She came here to study security to go back and work in the security sector. So I don't know if that's relevant. But it was a very small
Cohort when you went through, yes.
There was only 6 of us. And one more thing before I forget. At the end of the course, they take you on tours to security facilities. We went to E-Solutions and Reese's Security. Reese's just plumbing, right? So you might think, what security things, right? So again, it was just like the Matrix. You go in there, they've got all these, like if you've watched what's it called? Imitation Game? I don't know. Like the CSI, they've got it all set up. And you sit there, and the thing is, and this is what blew my mind, is when we walk into the solutions, for example, this is one, we sort of walked down and asked them, what are you doing? What did you study network security? And most of them said no. And most of it was policy, right? And the thing is, this field is actually pretty young. Like you might think it's well developed, but every business still doesn't really know what security is. Most of the security attacks are just phishing attacks. So most of it is just policy. What I'm trying to say is there's still a lot more room, there's a lot more potential, there's a lot more growth that's built in the industry. So you won't see it dying anytime soon. So, yeah.
That's all? Okay. So does anyone want to say anything else on the panel?
I just want to add that we do have some students recently graduated from our course that have let us know that they got some good positions in security back in their countries. We want to actually put a summary of some of those success stories that we heard about. We might put it up on our website sometime if we can organize that. So. But
Okay,
it's quite a new course, so we only started it 2 or 3 years ago, I think. So
it's been growing every year.
Growing, yeah.
So if anyone has any questions about credit or exemptions, please feel free to go and talk to Guido and Ron over there. And if anyone has any questions about anything that's not academic in nature, then you can come and talk to Alicia and Kim and I over here. Or if you want to talk to our former students or Gail or Pari or Campbell about IE or research or international student matters, feel free to do that. Thank you for coming.
Some are really exotic jobs. Some of them also, though, are MIT